You're asking a big question in a small space. So take what I say as it's an outline. It's a few seed thoughts. First, I might start with a secular novelist, William Styron, wrote a book describing his own depression. And he makes a fascinating comment that I would take as a starting point, that he says, the word depression is a terrible word. It's a word for an economic downturn or a slight dip in the topography. It's an absolutely dull word. It came from a man that had a tin ear for English. And then he proposes the old word, melancholy, because melancholy captures something of this searing edge of sorrow, anxiety, distress, guilt, paralysis, difficulty, anguish, feeling overwhelmed. And it captures all those richly human sorts of experiences. Now, once you start to talk about the experience in a way that humanizes it, you realize that for a human experience, the very first place you're going to think is not going to be medication. It's one of the ways where, because our culture, you might say, psychopathologizes it and dehumanizes the experience, treats it as a medical ailment only, the first thing the world cuts to is medicine. Now, that there are certainly cases where there is a clear biological component. If your thyroid gland is removed because of cancer, if you have postpartum hormones running amok, there will be a physiologically driven sense of extreme downness, extreme frightening even, discouragement, gloominess, blues, heartache can be there. But if there's not some overtly obvious physiological cause, the first thing you want to do in thinking about those human experiences is try to ask what's going on. Because there are many other causes, contributory factors in what gets labeled depression in our society. Some of them are as straightforward as life losses. Some of them are as fundamental as the living a life that is without hope and without God. I sometimes wonder why anyone without the hope of the resurrection is not profoundly depressed. And that existential despair and angst can catch up with a person. Germans add a word, Weltschmerz, sort of world sorrow, just something all-encompassing. There can be guilt over things one has done wrong, sense of failure and regrets. And the world we live in tends to not discriminate very well between those. It sort of takes the phenomenon of being down at face value. But you're obviously dealing with very different things when you're dealing with guilt, or when you're dealing with an extreme loss, or you're dealing with our existential condition, our unbelief, or you're dealing with something that may have a clear medical cause. I'm actually, my point of view on this would not be all that different from what's really the cutting edge within secular psychiatry. Leading psychiatrists, well, their way of putting it would be, if medication is there, take the absolutely smallest amount possible for the shortest possible time. And so, if someone's life is just one step below pond sludge, and something sort of provides a little bit of a lift so that they can deal with the real issues of life, the human issues, that's something that it really puts medication in its place. Maybe another little anecdote I think is worth mentioning. I heard the director of the National Institutes of Mental Health make a comment on this once, and obviously he's America's top psychiatrist. He's at the top of the research pyramid. And he said, we psychiatrists have been given an impossible task. We've been given to solve the sorrows and brokenness of the human condition. Our medications can sometimes alleviate symptoms, though they have side effects, often negative. But we can't give people what they really need. People need meaning and relationship. And I thought, as a Christian, well, I think I could sign on that dotted line. People really need meaning and relationship. Doesn't make it necessarily wrong to provide a little symptom relief, but let's make sure we go for the real issue that's at stake.